Hi, everybody, and welcome to episode number 466 of For Immediate Release. I'm Shel Holtz in Concord, California.
And I'm Neville Hobson in the UK.
And this is our monthly long-form episode for May 2025. We have 6 reports to share with you. 5 of them are directly related to the topic du jour of generative artificial intelligence, and we will get to those shortly. But first, Neville, why don't you tell us what we talked about in our short form midweek episodes, since, my memory's failing and I don't remember.
Yeah, some interesting topics we've had. A handful of short form episodes, 20 minutes more or less, since the last monthly, which we published on 28th of April. And I'll start with that one because that takes us forward. That was an interesting one with a number of topics. So the headline topic was cheaters never prosper, we said, unless you pay for what you create. And that was related to a university student who was expelled for developing an AI-driven tool to help applicants to software coding jobs cheat on the tests employers require them to take. And it had mixed views all around, with people saying, hey, this is cool and it's not a big deal if people cheat. Others who are abhorred by it is an abhorrent idea. I'm in that camp. I think it's a dreadful idea that most of that people think it's not a bad thing. It is. Cheating is not good. That's my view. There were a lot of other topics too in that as well, a handful of others that were really, really good. How communicators can use 7 categories of AI agents and a few others. Worth a listen. That was 90 minutes, that one. That's kind of hitting the target goal we had for the long form content. If it's too long, hit the pause button and come back to it. Might apply to this episode too. So that was 462 at the end of April. That was followed on May the 7th by 463 that talked about delivering value with generative AI's endless right answers. This was really quite an intriguing one, quoting Google's first chief decision scientist, who said that one of the biggest challenges of the Gen AI age is leaders defining value for their organization. And one of the considerations, she says, is mindset shift, in which there are endless right answers. So you create something that's right, you repeat the prompt and get a different, for images, for example, and get a different one. It's also right. And so she posed a question, which one is righter? It's an interesting conundrum type thing, but that was a good one. We had 16 minutes, that one.
We had a comment on that one,
we have
too,
a comment.
from
yeah, we do.
Dominique B., who said, sounds like it's time for a truthiness meter.
Okay. What's one of those?
Stephen Colbert fans here in the U.S. would understand truthiness. It's a cultural reference.
Got it. Good. Noted. Then 464... this was truly interesting to me because it's basically saying that, as we've talked about and others constantly talk about, you should disclose when you're using AI in some way that illustrates your honesty and transparency. Unfortunately, research shows that the opposite is true. That if you disclose that you've used AI to create an output, you're likely to find that your audiences will lose trust in you as soon as they see that you've disclosed this. It's counterintuitive. You'd think disclosing it and being transparent and honest is good. It doesn't play out according to the research. It's an interesting one. I think I'd err on the side of disclosure more than anything else. Maybe it depends on how you disclose. But it turns out that people trust AI more than they trust the humans using AI. And that we spent 17 and a half minutes on that one, Shel. That was a good one. You got a comment too, I think, have we not?
From Gail Gardner, who says, that isn't surprising given how inaccurate what AI generates is. If a brand discloses that they're using AI to write content, they need to elaborate on what steps they take to ensure the editor fact checks and improves it, which I think is a good point.
Wouldn't disagree with that. Then 465 on May the 21st of the Trust News video podcast PR trifecta. That's one of your headlines, Shel. I didn't write that one. So it talks about unrelated trends or seemingly unrelated trends, painting a clear picture for PR pros accustomed to achieving their goals through press release distribution and media pitching. The trends are that people trust each other less than ever. People define what news is based on its impact on them, becoming their own gatekeepers. And video podcasts have become so popular that media outlets are including them in their upfronts. So we looked at finding a common thread in our discussion among these trends. and setting out how communicators can adjust their efforts to make sure the news is received and believed. That was a lengthier one than usual. 26 minutes that came in at. So there's all this great stuff to consume. So, and that brings us, in fact, to now this episode, 466, the monthly. So we're kicking off the wrap-up of May and heading into a new month in about a week or so.
We also had an FIR interview drop this month.
We did. Thank you for the gentle nudge on mentioning that. That was our good friend Eric Schwartzman, who wrote an intriguing post, or article, I should say, in Fast Company about bot farms and how they're invading social media to hijack popular sentiment. Lengthy piece, got a lot of reaction on LinkedIn, likes and so forth in the thousands, some hundreds of comments. So we were lucky to get him for a chat. It's a precursor to a book he's writing based on that article that looks at bot farms, how they now outnumber real users on social networks, according to Eric's research, and how profits drive PR ethics, why Meta, TikTok, X, and even LinkedIn are complicit in enabling synthetic engagement at scale, says Eric. So lots to unpack in that. That was a 42-minute conversation with Eric. His new book called Invasion of the Bot Farms, he's currently preparing for that. It'll explore the escalating threat, he says, through insider stories and case studies. That was a good conversation with Eric Schell. It's an intriguing topic, and he really has done a lot of research on this.
And we do have a comment on that interview from Alex Brownstein, who's an executive vice president at a bioethics and emerging sciences organization, who says, ChatGPT and certain other mainstream AIs are purportedly designed to seek out and prioritize credible, authoritative information to inform their answers, which may provide some degree of counterbalance.
Okay.
And also, since the last monthly episode, there has been an episode of Circle of Fellows. This is the monthly panel discussion featuring usually 4 IABC fellows. That's the International Association of Business Communicator. I moderate most of these. I moderated this one, and it was about making the transition from being a communication professional to being a college or university professor teaching communication. And we had 4 panelists who have all made this move. Most of them have made it full-time and permanent. They are teachers and not working in communications anymore. One is still doing both, and they were John Clemens, Cindy Schmieg, Mark Schumann, and Jennifer Waugh. It was a great episode. It's up on the FIR podcast network now. The next Circle of Fellows is going to be an interesting one. It is going to be done live. This is the very first time this will happen, episode 117. So we've done 116 of these as live streams, and this one will be live streamed, but it'll be live streamed from Vancouver, site of the 2025 IABC World Conference, and Circle of Fellows is going to be one of the sessions. So we're going to have a table up on the platform with the 5 members of the 2025 class of IABC Fellows and me moderating. And in the audience, all the other fellows who are at conference will be out there among those who are attending the session. And we'll have the conversation. Brad Whitworth will have a microphone. He'll be wandering through the audience to take questions. It'll be fun. It'll be interesting. It will be live streamed as our Circle of Fellows episode for June. So watch the FIR Podcast Network or LinkedIn for announcements about when to watch that episode. Should be fun.
Okay. That does sound interesting. Shell, what date is it taking place? You know?
It's going to be Tuesday, June 10th at 10:30 a.m. Pacific time. It's the last session before lunch, so even though IABC has only given us 45 minutes for what's usually an hour-long discussion, we're going to take our hour. People can, if they're really hungry, if their blood sugar's dropping, they can leave. But we'll be there for the full hour for this Circle of Fellows.
I was just thinking, it's the last time I was in Vancouver was in 2006, and that was for the IBC conference in 2006. That's nearly 20 years ago. I mean, where's time gone, for goodness sake?
I don't know. I've been looking for it.
That was good. At the Google I/O conference last week, that's Google's developer conference, amongst many other things, the company unveiled a product called VEO3, that's VEO, VEO3. its most advanced AI video generation model yet, it's already sparking equal parts wonder and concern. VO3 isn't just about photorealistic visuals. It marks the end of what TechRadar calls the silent era of AI video by combining realistic visuals with synchronized audio, dialogue, soundtracks, and ambient noise, all generated from a simple text prompt. In short, it makes videos that feel real, with few, if any, of the telltale glitches we've come to associate with synthetic media. ZDNet and others included in a collection of links on TechMeme describe VO3 as a breakthrough in marrying video with audio, simulating physics, lip-syncing with uncanny accuracy, and opening creative doors for filmmakers and content creators alike. But that's only one side of the story. The realism VO3 achieves also raises alarms. Axios reports that many viewers can't tell VO3 clips from those made by human actors. In fact, synthetic content is becoming so indistinguishable that the line between real and fake is beginning to dissolve. Alarm is a point I made in a post on Blue Sky earlier last week when I shared a series of amazing videos created by Alejandra Caravaggio at Harvard Law Cyber Law Clinic, portraying TV news readers reading out a breaking news story she created just from a simple text prompt. What comes immediately to mind, I said, is the disinformation uses of such a tool. What on earth will you be able to trust now? One of Alejandra's comments in the long thread was, this is going to be used to manipulate people on a massive scale. Others in that thread noted how easily such clips can be repeated and recontextualized with no visual watermark to distinguish them from real broadcast footage. I mean, one thing is for sure, Sel, if you've watched any of these, they're now peppered all over LinkedIn, on Blue Sky, and most social networks. You truly are going to have your jaw dropping when you see some of these things. If you've not hard to visualize just hearing an audio description, but they truly are quite extraordinary. This is a whole new level. There's also the question of cost and access. VO3 is priced at a premium around $1,800 per hour for professional grade use, suggesting a divide between those who can afford powerful generative tools and those who can't. So we're not just talking about a creative leap, we're staring at an ethical and societal challenge too. Is VO3 one of the most consequential technologies Google has released in years, not just for creators, but for good and bad actors and society at large? How do you see it, Sean?
Well, first of all, it's phenomenal technology. I've seen several of the videos that have been shared. I saw one where the prompt asked it to create a TV commercial for a ridiculous breakfast cereal product. It was Otter Crunch or something like that. And it had a kid eating Otter Crunch at the table and the mom holding the box and saying, Otter Crunch is great, or whatever it was that she said. And you couldn't tell that this wasn't shot in a studio. It was that good. Alarm? I'm surprised that there is alarm because we have known for years that this was coming. And I don't think it should be a surprise that it has arrived at this point, given the quality of the video services that we have seen from other providers. And this is a game of leapfrog, so that you know that one of the other video providers is going to take what Google has done and take it to the next level, maybe allowing you to make longer videos, or there will be some bells and whistles that they'll be able to add, and the prices will drop. This is a preliminary price. It's a brand new thing. We see this with OpenAI all the time, where the first time they release something, you have to be in that $200 a month tier of customer in order to use it, but then within a couple of months, it's available at the $20 a month level or at the free level. So this is going to become widely available from multiple services. I think we need to look at the benefits this provides as well as the risk that it provides. This is going to make it easy for people who don't have big budgets to do the kind of video that gets the kind of attention that leads to sales or whatever it is your communication objective was. For enhancing videos that you are producing with actual footage in order to create openers or bridges or just to extend a scene. It's going to be terrific. Even at $1,800 an hour, there are a lot of people who can't get high quality video for $1,800 an hour. So this is going to be a boon to a lot of creators. In terms of the risk, again, I think, it's education. It's knowing what to look for. It's getting the word out to people about the kinds of scams that people are running with this so that they're on their guard. It's going to be the same scams that we've seen with less superior technology. It's going to be, the grandmother con, right? Where you get the call and it sounds like it's your grandson's voice. I've been kidnapped. They're demanding this much money. Please send it. Sure sounds like him. So grandma sends the money. So this is the kind of education that has to get out there, because it's just going to get more realistic and easier to con people with the cons that frankly have been working well enough to keep them going up until now.
Yeah, I think there is real cause for major alarm at a tool like this. You just set out many of the reasons why, but I think the risk mostly comes more from, or rather less from, examples like the grandmother call saying, or someone calling the grandmother, I've been kidnapped. I mean, I don't know anyone that's ever happened to. I'm not saying it doesn't, but that doesn't seem to me to be like a major daily thing. More prosaic, more fundamental than that. But some of the examples you can see, and the good one to mention is the one from Alejandra Caravaggio, the video she created, which were a collection of clips with the same prompt. And they were all TV anchors, presenters on television, talking about breaking news that J.K. Rowling had drowned because a yacht sank after it was attacked by orcas in the Mediterranean off the coast of Turkey. What jumped at me when I saw the first one was my God, this was so real. It looked like it was a TV studio, all were created from that simple prompt. But then came 3 more versions, all with different accented English. American English, US English, English as a second language for one of the presenters, that illustrated from that one prompt what you could do. And she said that the first video took literally a couple of seconds, and within less than 10 minutes, after tweaking a couple of things after a number of attempts, she had a collection of 5 videos. So imagine that. There are benefits, unquestionably. And indeed, some of the links we've got really go through some significant detail of the benefits of this to creators. But right on the back of that comes this a big alarm bell ringing. This is what the downside looks like. And I think your point about it's going to come down, competitors will emerge, undoubtedly. I totally agree with you, but that isn't yet. In the meantime, this thing's got serious first mover advantage, and the talk up that I'm seeing across the tech landscape mostly, it hasn't yet hit mainstream talk. I'm not sure how you kind of explain it in a way that excites people unless you see the videos, but this is big alarm bell territory in my opinion, and I think it'll accelerate a number of things, one of which is more calls to regulate and control this if you can. And, who knows what Trump's going to do about this? Probably embrace it, I would imagine. I mean, you've seen what he's doing already with video and stuff that promotes him in his emperor's clothes and all this stuff. So this is, though, a major milestone, I think, in the development of these technologies. It will be interesting to see who else comes out in a way that that challenges Google. But if you read Google's very technically focused description, this is not a casual development by 6 guys with a couple of computers. This is required, I would imagine, serious money and significant quantum computing power to get it to this stage in a way that enables anyone with a reasonably powered computer to use it and create something. You've got that aspect to consider. Should we be doing something like this that it generates huge, or rather uses huge amounts of electricity and energy and all the carbon emissions? So you've got that side of the debate that's beginning to come out a little bit. So it's experimental time without doubt. And there are some terrific learnings we can get from this. I mean, I'd love to give it a go myself, but not at $1,800. So if I had someone to do it for, I could charge them for that, I'd be happy. But I'm observing what others are doing and hearing what people are saying. And it's picking up pace. Every time I look online, there's something new about this. Someone else has done something and they're sharing it. So great examples to see. So yes, let's take a look at what the benefits are. And let's see what enterprises will make of this and what we can learn from it. But I'm keeping a close eye on what others are saying about the risks, because we haven't you talk about, the education, all that stuff. No one seems to have paid any attention to any of that over the years. So why are they going to pay attention to this now if we try and educate them? So
well, that really depends on how you go about this, who's
it does.
delivering the message. I mean, where I work, we communicate cybersecurity risk all the time. And we make the point, this isn't only a risk to our company, this is a risk to you and your family. You need to take these messages home and share them with your kids. And every time something new comes out where there's a new scam, where we are aware, and we usually hear about this through our IT security folks, but where we are aware that in our industry, somebody was scammed effectively with something that was new, we get that out to everybody. We use multiple channels, and we get feedback from people who are grateful for us telling them this. So it's not that people won't listen. You just have to get them in a way that resonates with them. And you have to use multiple channels, and you have to be repetitive with this stuff. You have to kind of drill it into their heads. I see organizations spending money on PSAs on TV, alerting people to these scams. They're all imposter scams, is what it comes down to. It's pretending to be something that they aren't. What troubles me about this, I think, is that we are talking a lot about erosion of trust. We talked about it on the last midweek episode, the fact that people trust each other less than they ever have. Only 34% of people say they trust other people, that other people are trustworthy. And we're trying to rebuild trust. At the same time, we're telling people, you can't trust what you see. You can't trust your own eyes anymore. So this is a challenging time. Without any question, you have to deal with both of these things at the same time. We need to build trust at the same time we're telling people you can't trust anything.
Well, that is the challenge. You're absolutely right, because people don't actually need organizations to tell them that. They can see with their own eyes, but it's then reinforced by what they're hearing from governments. We've got an issue that I think is very germane to bring this into the conversation, something in this country that is truly extraordinary. One of the biggest retailers here, Marks and Spencer, was the subject of a huge cyber attack a month ago, and it's still not solved. Their websites, you still can't do any buying online. You can't do click and collect, none of those things. Today, they announced you can now, again, log onto the website and browse. You can't buy anything. You can't pay electronically. You can only do it in the stores. And that, no one seems to know precisely what exactly it is. There's so much speculation. There's so much talk that of which most is uninformed, which is fueling the worry and alarm about this. And the consequences for Marks and Spencer are potentially severe from a reputational point of view and brand trust, all those things. They haven't solved this yet. That, people are saying, that was likely caused by a insecure password login by someone who is a supplier of Marks and Spencer. But this is not like your little store down the road. This is a massive enterprise that has global operations. And the estimates at the moment is that the cost to them is likely to be around £300 million. It's serious money. They're losing £1 million a day.
And what was the ransom?
Serious. Oh, they won't disclose it. It's illegal to do that here in the UK, to pay the ransom if you disclose it. Government advice from the cyber security folks is don't pay the ransom. Difficult thing to me is that you follow that advice and they're still not solving the problem. The point I'm making, though, is that this is just another example of forged trust, if I could say it that way. That it was likely, until information arrives telling exactly what it was, that someone persuaded someone to do something who they thought was someone else that they weren't, that enabled that person to get access.
Sure.
Right. So this is going to be like that for some of the examples we've seen. But I think it's likely as well to be kind of normal that you would almost find impossible to even imagine that it was a fake. So what's going to happen when the J.K. Rowling example, like someone in a prominent position in society or whatever, it's suddenly on a website somewhere that gets picked up and repeated everywhere before it's, well, wait a minute, is this true? What's the source of this? But it's too late by then. And that's likely what we're going to see.
We reported on a story like this many years ago. It was, if I remember correctly, a bank robbery in Texas. It was a story that got picked up by multiple news outlets. Yeah. It was completely fake. The first outlet that picked it up just assumed that it was accurate because of their source. And all the other newspapers picked it up because they assumed that the first newspaper that picked it up had checked their facts, but it was a completely false story. This is nothing new. It's just with this level of realistic video, it's going to be that much easier to convince people that this is real and either share it or act on it.
And it won't be waiting on the media to pick up and report on it. That's too slow. It'll be TikTokers, it'll be YouTube. It's anyone with a website that has some kind of audience that's connected, and it'll be amplified big time like that. So it'll be out of control probably within seconds of the first video appearing. That's not to say that, oh dear, this is, so what do we do? We got to be, that is the landscape now. And I honestly and truly can't imagine how the example of like a J.K. Rowling death at sea and all that stuff is on multiple TV screens, supposedly TV studios, that you don't think when you're watching it, hang on, is this legit, this TV show? Or you might occur to you, but the other 9 people out there who are watching along with you aren't going to ask themselves that. They're going to share it. And suddenly it's out there. And before you know it, I don't know, if it's, say, the CEO of a big company, that's happened at a time of some kind of merger or takeover going on, and then that person suddenly dropped dead. That's the kind of thing I'm thinking about. So I can see the real need to have some kind of, don't know what to even call it, Shell, regulation, I'm not sure, I don't know, by government or someone alongside. You can't just leave this to individual companies like yours who are doing a good job. Well, there are 50 others out there who aren't doing this at all. So you can't let it sit like that, because the scale of this is breathtaking, frankly, what's going to happen. And I think Alejandro Caraballo and others I've seen saying the same thing, that this is going to be a tool used to manipulate people on a massive scale. We're not talking about business employees necessarily, the public at large. This is going to manipulate people. And we're already seeing that at small scale, based on the tech we have now. This tech's up notches, in my view. So, $1,800, people are going to do this, that to them it's like, petty cash almost. Or someone's going to come out with something, again, that isn't going to be that, and it's on a dark web somewhere, and, So, I'm now getting into areas that I have no idea what I'm going to be talking about, so I'm going to stop that now. I don't know how that's going to work. This requires attention, in my opinion, that to protect people and organizations from the bad actors, that euphemistic phrase, who are intent on causing disruption and chaos. And this is potentially what this will achieve alongside all that good stuff.
It'll be interesting to hear what Google plans to do to prevent people from using it for those purposes.
They have an FAQ which talks a little bit about that, but this is like a draft still, I would say.
I have access to VO2 on my $20 a month Gemini account, so I'll just wait the 6 weeks until VO3 is available there.
Well, things may have moved on to who knows what in 6 weeks, I would say. But nevertheless, this is an intriguing development technologically, and what it lets people do in a good sense is the exciting part. The worrying part is what the bad guys are going to be doing.
The microfilm is in your ticket.
They're watching the north exit. Use the service tunnel.
Where were you on the night of the bubble bath?
They left behind a ball today. It bounced higher than I can jump.
What manner of magic is that? This ocean, it's a force, a wild, untamed might. And she commands your awe with every breaking light.
Well, the fact that generative AI chatbots hallucinate isn't a revelation. At least it shouldn't be at this point. And yet, AI hallucinations are causing real consequential damage to organizations and individuals alike, including a lot of people who should know better. And contrary to logic and common sense, it's actually getting worse. Just this past week, we've seen two high-profile cases that illustrate the problem. First, the Chicago Sun-Times published what they called a summer reading list for 2025. They recommended 15 books. 10 of them didn't exist. They were entirely fabricated by AI, complete with compelling descriptions of Isabel Allende's non-existent climate fiction novel Tidewater Dreams and Andy Weir's imaginary thriller The Last Algorithm. The newspaper's response? Well, they blamed a freelancer from King Features, which is a company that syndicates content to newspapers across the country. It's owned by Hearst. That freelancer used AI to generate the list without fact-checking it, and the Sun-Times published it believing King Features content was accurate, and other publications shared it because the Chicago Sun-Times had done it. Then there's the even more embarrassing case of Anthropic. That's the company behind the Claude AI chatbot, one of the really big international large language models, frontier models. Their own lawyers had to apologize to a federal judge after Claude hallucinated a legal citation in a court filing. The AI generated a fake title and fake authors for what should have been a real academic paper. Their manual citation check missed it entirely. Think about that for a moment. A company that makes AI couldn't catch its own tool's mistakes, even with human review. Now, here's what's particularly concerning for those of us in communications. This isn't getting better with newer AI models. According to research from Vectara, even the most accurate AI models still hallucinate at least 0.7% of the time, with some models producing false information in nearly 1 of every 3 responses. MIT research from January found that when AI models hallucinate, they actually use more confident language than when they're producing accurate information. They're 34% more likely to use phrases like definitely, certainly, and without doubt when they're completely wrong. So what does this mean for PR and communications professionals? 3 critical things. First, we need to fundamentally rethink our relationship with AI tools. The Chicago Sun-Times incident happened just 2 months after the paper laid off 20% of its staff. Organizations under financial pressure are increasingly turning to AI to fill gaps, but without proper oversight, they're creating massive reputation risks. When your summer reading list becomes a national embarrassment because you trusted AI without verification, you got a crisis communication problem on your hands. Second, the trust issue goes deeper than individual mistakes. As we mentioned in a recent midweek episode, research shows that audiences lose trust as soon as they see AI disclosure labels, but finding out you used AI without disclosing it is even worse for trust. This creates what researchers call the transparency dilemma. Damned if you disclose, damned if you don't. For communicators who rely on credibility and trust, this is a fundamental challenge we haven't come to terms with. Third, we're seeing AI hallucinations spread into high-stakes environments where the consequences are severe. Beyond the legal filing errors, we've seen multiple times now, from Anthropic to the Israeli prosecutors who cited non-existent laws. We're seeing healthcare AI that hallucinates medical information 2.3% of the time, and legal AI tools that produce incorrect information in at least some percentage of cases that could affect real legal outcomes. The bottom line for communication professionals is that AI can be a powerful tool, but it is not a replacement for human judgment and verification. I know we say this over and over and over again, and yet look at the number of companies that use it that way. The industry has invested $12.8 billion specifically to solve hallucination problems in the last 3 years, yet we're still seeing high-profile failures from major organizations who should know better. My recommendation, if you're using AI in your communications work, and let's be honest, most of us are, insist on rigorous verification processes. Don't just spot check, verify every factual claim, every citation, every piece of information that could damage your organization's credibility if it's wrong. And remember, the more confident AI sounds, the more suspicious you should be. The Chicago Sun-Times called their incident a learning moment for all of journalism. I'd argue it's a learning moment for all of us in communications. We can't afford to let AI hallucinations become someone else's crisis communications case study.
Until the next one.
And it becomes a case study.
Right. I mean, listen to what you're saying. You're absolutely right. Yet the humans are the problem. Arguably, and I've heard this, no, they're not. It's the technology's not up to scratch.
Humans are the solution.
Fine. Right. In that case, you know that. So therefore, you've got to pay very close attention and do all the things that you outlined before that people are not doing. So this one is extraordinary. Snopes has a good analysis of it, talking about this. King Features, I mean, their communication about it, they said, the company has a strict policy with our staff, cartoonists, columnists, and freelance writers against the use of AI to create content. And that they said it will be ending its relationship with the guy who did this. Okay, throw him under the bus, basically. So you don't have guidance in place properly, even though you say you have a strict policy. That's not the same thing, is it? So I think this was inevitable, and we're going to see it again, Joe. We will, and the consequences will be dire. I was reading a story this morning here in the UK of a lawyer who was an intern. Well, that's not her title, but she was a junior person, that she entered into evidence, some research she'd done without checking, and it was all fake, done by the AI. And the case turns out, and again, this is precisely the concern, not the tech. It's not her fault. She didn't have proper supervision. She was pressured by people who didn't help her because she didn't know enough, and so she didn't know how to do something, and she was under tight parameters to complete this thing. So she did, and no one checked her work at all. So she apologized and all that stuff, and yes, the judge, from what I read, isn't penalizing her. It's her boss he should be penalizing. You're going to see that repeated. I'm sure already exists in case up and down businesses, organizations everywhere, where that is not an unusual setup, a structure. Lack of support, lack of training, lack of encouragement. Indeed, the whole bring it out, let's get policies set up, guidance, and not just publish it on the internet. We bring it to people's attention. We embrace them. We encourage them. We bring them on board to conversations constantly, brown bag lunches, all the informal ways of doing this too. And I'm certain that happens a lot. But this example and others we could bring up and mention show that it's not in those particular organizations. So the time will come, I don't believe it's happened yet, Shell, where the most monumentally catastrophic clangor will be dropped sooner or later in an organization, whether it's a government, whether it's a private company, whether it's a medical system or whatever, that could have life or death consequences for people. Don't believe that's happened yet that we know of anyway, but the time is coming where it's going to.
It will. It undoubtedly will. And you'll see medical decisions get made based on a hallucination that somebody didn't check. What strikes me, though, is that we talk about AI as an adjunct, right? It is an enhancement to what humans do. It allows you to offload a lot of the drudgery so that you can focus your time on more human-centric and more strategic endeavors, which is great, but you still have to make sure that the drudge work is done right. I mean, that work is being done for a reason. It may be drudgery to produce it, but it must have some value or the organization wouldn't want it anymore. So it's important to check those. And in organizations that are cutting headcount, what a lot of employees are doing is using AI in order to be able to get all their work done. That drudge work, having the AI do that and spend 15 minutes on it instead of 3 hours, it's not like those 3 hours are available to them to fact check. They've got other things that they need to do. Organizations that are cutting staff need to be cognizant of the fact that they may be cutting the ability to fact check the output of the AI, which could do something egregious enough to cost them a whole lot more than they saved by cutting that staff. And by the way, I saw research very recently. I almost added it as a report in today's episode that found that investors are not thrilled with all the layoffs that they're seeing in favor of AI. They think it's a bad idea. So, if you're looking for a way to get your leaders to temper their inclinations to trim their staff, you may want to point to the fact that they may lose investors over decisions like that. But we need the people to fact check these things. And by the way, I have found an interesting way to fact check, and it is not an exclusive approach to this, but let me give you just this quick example. On our intranet every week, I share a construction term of the week that not every employee may know, and I have the description of that term written by one of the large language models. I don't know what these things mean. I'm not a construction engineer. So I get it written, and then the first thing I do is I copy it, and then I go to another one of the large language models and paste it in, and I say, review this for accuracy and give me a list of what you would change to make it more accurate. And most of the time it says, this is a really accurate write-up that you've got of this term. I would recommend to enhance the accuracy that you add these things. So I'll say, go ahead and do that, write it up and make those things. Then I'll go to a third large language model and ask the same question. I'll still go do a Google search and find something that describes all of this to make sure I've got it right. But I find playing the large language models against each other as accuracy checks works pretty well.
Yeah, I do a similar thing too, not for everything. I mean, like everyone who's got the time to do all that all the time, but depends, I think, on what you're doing. But it is something that we need to pay attention to. And in fact, this is quite a good segue to our next piece, our next story, where artificial intelligence plays a big role. And this one talks about, I'll outline it really, a new report from the Global Alliance for Public Relations and Communication Management that it offers a timely and global perspective on how our profession is adapting and in many cases struggling to keep pace as artificial intelligence continues its rapid integration into our daily work. As AI tools become embedded in the workflows of communication professionals around the world, a new survey from the Global Alliance offers a revealing snapshot of where our profession currently stands and where it may be falling short. The report, titled Reimagining Tomorrow, AI and PR and Communication Management, draws on insights from nearly 500 PR and communication professionals. The findings paint a picture of a profession that's enthusiastically embracing AI tools, particularly for content creation, but falling short when it comes to strategic leadership, ethical governance, and stakeholder communication. While adoption is high, 91% of respondents say they're using AI. The report highlights a striking absence of strategic leadership. Only 8.2% of PR and communication teams are leading in AI governance or strategy, according to the report. Yet professionals rank governance and ethics as their top AI priorities at 33% and 27% respectively. Despite this, PR teams are mostly engaged in tactical tasks such as content creation and tool support. This gap between strategic intent and practical involvement is critical. If PR professionals don't position themselves as stewards of responsible AI use, other functions like IT or legal will define the narrative. This has implications not only for reputation management, but for organizational relevance in the comms function. Now, in a post on his blog last week, our friend Stuart Bruce describes the findings as alarming, arguing that communicators are failing to lead on the very issues that matter most: ethics, transparency, stakeholder trust, and reputation. His critique is clear. If PR doesn't step up to define the responsive use of AI, we risk becoming sidelined in decisions that affect not just our teams, but the wider organization and society. The Global Alliance's report also shows that while AI is mostly being used for content creation, very few are leveraging its potential for audience insights, crisis response, or strategic decision-making. Many PR pros still don't fully understand what AI can actually do, says Stewart, either tactically or strategically. Worse, some are operating under common myths, such as avoiding any use of AI with private data, regardless of whether they're using secure enterprise tools or not. So where does this leave us? Well, it looks to me like somewhere between a promise and a missed opportunity. How would you see it, Shel?
Oh, it is a missed opportunity so far as I am concerned. And I have seen research that basically breaks through the communications boundary into the larger world of business that says, yes, there's great stuff going on in organizations in terms of the adoption of AI, but there is not really strategic leadership happening in most organizations. Employees are using it. There are a growing number of policies, although most organizations still don't have policies. Most organizations still don't have ethics guidelines, although a growing number do. There are companies like mine that have AI committees, but the leadership needs to come from the very top down. And that's what this research found isn't happening. I was just scrolling through my bookmarks trying to find it. I'll definitely turn that up before the show notes get published. If it's not happening at the leadership levels of organizations, it's not happening at the leadership levels of communication. I certainly can see that in the real world as I talk to people. It's being used at a very tactical level, but nobody is really looking at the whole overall operation of communication in the organization, the role that it plays, and how it goes about doing that through that lens of AI and how we need to adapt and change, and how we need to prepare ourselves to continue to adapt and change as things like VO3 are released on the market, and suddenly you're facing a potential new reputational threat.
Lots to unpack there. It's worth reading the report. It's well worth the time.
Greetings, Shell and Neville and FR listeners all around the world. It's Dan York coming at you on a gray, rainy day in Shelburne, Vermont. And I want to speak first of endings. A big ending that happened this month was the end of Skype. Microsoft closed the application, migrated all your contacts and chats over to Teams, and Skype was no more. Now, I'll be honest and say I haven't used Skype hardly at all in the last maybe 5+ years. I don't even have it installed on my latest Mac computer, nor on my mobile devices. But if you think back, it started in 2003 out of a small startup in Estonia. It was acquired by eBay in 2005, acquired by Microsoft in 2009. But it revolutionized the way we communicate online. Because suddenly you could just open up this app and you could connect by voice and video and chat with people anywhere in the world. Yes, there were other apps that were out there, but the key thing Skype did was it made it super simple and easy. You just clicked the icon and you did it. I had, Skype calls with my 104-year-old grandmother. It was just amazing, and anyone could do it, and it worked across systems, across it was just amazing. And for so many years, that was what we did. We Skyped people. We talked about it all the time. We had it on our business cards, in our signatures. We used it for this show to go and record interviews, to record connections, to do things. We talked about mixed minuses with Skype. We did so many different things with Skype. For a moment in time, it changed how we communicate and showed a path to having actual voice video communication. I know because I was working in telecom for part of that time, and they were just amazed at how well Skype could do in different forms. Now, in more recent years, it never quite caught up to what was going on with Zoom and WhatsApp and Slack and so many other different kinds of systems. But it was a powerful thing, and it has now passed on. Other things ended this past month, too. I don't know if any of you have been following Anil Dash's Glitch platform for hosting applications, but it ended. Mozilla ended a couple of things. The big one that's disappointing to me is it ended the Pocket service for capturing web pages and things. I've always been looking at bookmarking services, going back to like Delicious, if we remember that. But I've been using Pocket for the past number of years, and it's been quite useful and powerful for storing information. I'm sad to see that go. But, orgs are focusing in different kinds of ways. But let's talk about the new stuff that's happening too, because there's a lot of it. The world of the Fediverse with Mastodon and Blue Sky is just continuing to explode with all sorts of new features and things. One fascinating thing that Blue Sky is doing now, or they've announced a pilot program, is that if you do live streaming on Twitch or YouTube, select accounts right now are able to go and add in their live streaming handles. So when you're in Blue Sky, you can see when they're online and when they're streaming live, and you can go and jump to that. As somebody who's done a fair bit of live streaming, I find that very interesting. I also find it interesting that Blue Sky is making it so you can connect out to other services. This is unlike, say, Facebook, which tries to keep you inside the Facebook world. So it would show you when you were going live with Facebook Live, but not necessarily connecting you out to other platforms. Part of what's, I think, an interesting and cool evolution of Blue Sky is how they can go and connect you to other services and other things. One of the other services doing that is something called Bridgy Fed. It's a cumbersome name, but it's literally like fed.brid.gy, or just look up Bridgy Fed, BRIDGY Fed. It is a site which what it will do is allow you to connect your Mastodon account or any other Fediverse account with a Blue Sky account, so you can be able to go and make your profile, visible in one and the other, follow people, connect, interact, exchange between them. It's a cool idea, and it's something very powerful that's happening out there. So there's so much stuff happening in this space. And in fact, I would encourage you, if you're interested, there's a cool event coming up on June 5th to 7th called Fediforum. It is online, and it is talking about moving the open social web forward. It's an online unconference called, and again, it's just at Fediforum, Fedi Forum, FORUM.org. And you can see what's going on, find out the schedule, what's happening. It's Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, June 5th to 7th. And there's all sorts of different kinds of events, a couple of keynotes, including one from Cory Doctorow, some different kinds of sessions. And it's an interesting community of people, but I would encourage you to check that out. On a different level, I'd also say that unfortunately, or fortunately, whatever, there's more things to comply with here in the United States where I live. And one of them is the Take It Down Act, which is looking to go and stop the spread of non-consensual sexual imagery and some other, it's non-consensual distribution of intimate images and some other pieces like that. But if you are operating something like a Fediverse server or something else, there are some things you have to pay attention to. Thankfully, the folks at an organization called IFTIS, the Independent Federated Trust and Safety Organization, wrote up a pretty good set of guidelines for operators of Fediverse-related services about what you need to do and what's required of you, etc. I'll have the link for the show notes, something to think about. And while we celebrated an ending, let's talk about a continuation. Mike McIrvin pointed out that it's happy 15th birthday to the oldest still living community software effort in the Fediverse forest. It's the set of software that was Friendica, so many different kinds of things like that has been going for such a long time. So there were federated groups, circles, cross-domain sign-up, so many things. Just a good reminder that all this decentralized activity happening with Blue Sky, with Mastodon, with everything else, builds on this foundation of the people who've been trying to work on this for so long to ensure that we do have control over what we're doing and how we're engaging online. Great stuff. I'm glad people are working on it. I hope they continue for another 15 years. With that, I'll send it back to you, Shell Neville. It's Dan York. You can find more of my audio and writing at danyork.me. Thanks for listening. Bye for now.
Hey, Dan, thank you for that great report. Yeah, I had to wipe a tear away as well over the passing of Skype. You're right. It was amazing as the only tool that allowed you to do what it could do. And as we have mentioned here more than once in the past, it is the only reason that we were able to start this podcast. in the first place. Without Skype, you were in Amsterdam at the time.
Yeah.
And for you and I to be able to talk together and record both sides of our conversation, Skype was the reason that we could do that. The only other option would have been what at the time was an expensive long distance phone call with really terrible audio. Who knew the double ender back in those days? We could have done it. You realize we could have both recorded our own ends. It would have taken forever to send those files back then because the speeds
it would have been quicker burning them to a CD and sending it by courier, I would say.
Yeah, no kidding. So bless Skype for enabling not just us, but pretty much any podcasters who were doing interviews or co-host arrangements. Skype made it possible, but Skype also enabled a lot of global business. There were a lot of meetings that didn't have to happen in person. I mean, you look at Zoom today, Zoom is standing on the shoulders of Skype.
Yeah, it actually did enable a lot. You're absolutely right. I can remember too, you'll remember this, of course, back in those days when both of us, I think, both of us were independent consultants. So, pitching for business, securing contacts and following up and all that was key. We had what Skype called Skype out numbers that were regular phone numbers that people could use like a landline, and that would get forwarded through to Skype. Wife's family in Costa Rica, she used Skype to make calls all the time. That replaced sending faxes, which is how they used to communicate, because that was cheaper than international phone calls at that time. Lots happened in that time, but in reality, it's only 20 years ago. It sounds a lot, but all this has happened in a 20-year period. And Skype was the catalyst for much of this. And they laid the foundation for Teams that we see now, Zoom, Google Meet, all those services that we can use. What happened to WebEx and the like? It seems to have largely vanished to what I can see. So we're used to all this stuff now. But it was great starter for us.
Yeah, I had a Skype out. My Skype out number I got, it was my business number. And I got a 415 area code because that's San Francisco. Yeah. And nobody knew the 510 area code in the East Bay outside of the Bay Area. So it provided just that little extra bit of cachet. Oh, a San Francisco number. I mean, there was just so much good that came out of Skype. They kept coming up with great features and great tools, even after Microsoft bought it.
Yeah. So, and the pricing structure was good. At that time, I had business on the East Coast in the US, and I had a New York number. So
that's great.
Yeah, it was super. But so good to have a reminisce there, Dan. That was great. I was intrigued by your element about BridgieFed, which I've been trying to use that since it emerged with Blue Sky, but also with Ghost, which has enabled a lot of this connectivity with other servers in the Fediverse. And so I've kind of got it all set up, but no matter what I do, it just does not connect, and I haven't figured out why not yet. So you've prompted me to get this sorted out because it's important. I've got my social web address, and it was enabled by Ghost that works on Mastodon. And it enables Blue Sky to connect with Mastodon too. It's really quite cool. But BridgieFed's key to much of that functionality. Maybe it's just me. I just haven't figured it out yet. That could be. So this is definitely not yet in the mainstream readiness arena quite yet. But this is the direction of travel without any doubt. And I think it's great that we eliminate these activity pub versus AT protocol. It just works. No one gives a damn about whether you're on a different protocol or not. That's where we're aiming for. And that's what is actually we're moving towards quite quickly. Not for me, though, until I get this working.
Well, one protocol will win over another at one point or another. It always does.
Yeah, Betamax and VHS. Look at that.
And that's the power of marketing because Betamax was the higher quality format.
Right.
Well, let's explore a fascinating and entirely predictable phenomenon that's emerging in the corporate world. Companies that enthusiastically laid off workers to replace them with AI are now quietly hiring humans back. This item ticks a lot of boxes, man. Organizational communication, brand trust, crisis management. Let's start with the poster child for this phenomenon. Klarna, the buy now, pay later company. CEO Sebastian Siemiatkowski became something of an AI evangelist, loudly declaring that his company had essentially stopped hiring a year ago. shrinking from 4,500 to 3,500 employees through what he called natural attrition. He bragged that AI could already do all the jobs that humans do, and even created an AI deepfake of himself to report quarterly earnings, supposedly proving that even CEOs can be replaced. How'd that work out for him? Just last week, Simitkowski announced that Klarna is now hiring human customer service agents again. Why? Because, as he put it, from a brand perspective, a company perspective, I just think it's so critical that you are clear to your customer that there will always be a human if you want. The very CEO who said AI could replace everyone is now admitting that human connection is essential for brand trust. It isn't an isolated case. We're seeing this pattern repeat across industries, and it should serve as a wake-up call for communications professionals about the risk of overly aggressive AI adoption without considering the human element. Take Duolingo, which had been facing an absolute firestorm of social media after CEO Louis Vuitton announced that the company was going AI first. The backlash was so severe that Duolingo deleted all of its TikTok and Instagram posts, wiping out years of carefully crafted content from accounts with millions of followers. The company's own social media team then posted a cryptic video. They were all wearing those anonymous style masks, saying, "Duolingo was never funny. We were." And what a stunning example of how your employees can become your biggest communication crisis when AI policies directly threaten their livelihoods. All this is particularly troubling from a communication perspective. These companies didn't just lose employees, they lost institutional knowledge, creativity, and human insight that made their brands distinctive in the first place. A former Duolingo contractor told one journalist that the AI-generated content is very boring, while Duolingo was always known for being fun and quirky. When you replace the humans who created your brand voice with AI, you risk losing the very thing that made your brand memorable. But here's the broader pattern we need to understand. According to new research, just 1 in 4 AI investments actually deliver the ROI they promise. Meanwhile, companies are spending an average of $14,200 per employee per year just to catch and correct AI mistakes. Knowledge workers are spending over 4 hours a week verifying AI output. These aren't the efficiency gains that were promised. Now, I firmly believe those are still coming, those gains, and in a lot of cases, they're actually here now. Some organizations are realizing them as we speak, but we're not out of the woods yet. From a crisis communication standpoint, the AI layoff rehire cycle creates multiple reputation risks. There's the immediate backlash when you announce AI replacements. We saw this with Klarna and Duolingo and others. Employees and customers both react negatively to the idea that human workers are disposable. Then there's the credibility hit when you quietly reverse course and start hiring people again. It signals that your AI strategy wasn't as well thought out as you claimed, and that sort of trickles over into how much people trust your judgment and other things that you're making decisions about. For those of us working in communication, this trend highlights some critical lessons. A stakeholder communication about AI needs to be honest about limitations, not just potential and benefits. Companies that overpromise on AI capability set themselves up for embarrassing reversals. Klarna's CEO went from saying AI could do all human jobs to admitting that customer service quality suffered without human oversight. Second, employee communications around AI adoption require extreme care. When you announce AI-first policies, you're essentially telling your workforce they're expendable. The Duolingo social media team's rebellion shows what happens when you lose internal buy-in. Your employees become your critics, not your champions. And brand voice and customer experience are fundamentally human elements that can't be easily automated. Companies struggling most are those that tried to replace creative and customer-facing roles with AI. Meanwhile, companies succeeding with AI are using it to augment human capabilities, not replace them entirely. The irony here is pretty rich. At a time when trust in institutions is at historic lows, companies are discovering that human connection and authenticity matter more than ever. You can't automate your way to trust. So, what should communication professionals take away from this AI layoff rehire cycle? Be deeply skeptical of any AI strategy that eliminates human oversight in customer-facing roles. Push back on claims that AI can fully replace creative or strategic communications work. And remember that when AI initiatives go wrong, it becomes a communications problem that requires very human skills to solve. The companies getting all this right are the ones that view it as a tool to enhance human capabilities, not replace them. The ones getting it wrong are learning an expensive lesson about the irreplaceable value of human judgment, creativity, and connection.
Yeah, it got me thinking about the human bit that doesn't get this, which typically are leaders in an organization, but actually not necessarily at the highest level. I'm thinking in particular of companies. I've had a need to go through this process recently who replace people at the end of a phone line in customer support with a chatbot typically as the first line of defense. And I use that phrase deliberately. It defends them from having to talk to a customer, where they have a chatbot where it guides you through carefully controlled scripted scenarios that it does have a little bit of leeway in its intelligence to respond on the fly to a question that's not in the script, as it were, but only marginally. And so you still have to go through a system that is poor at best and downright dangerous at worst in terms of trust with customers. Your point, I agree totally. This is, it kind of fosters a climate of mistrust entirely when you can't get to a human and all you get is a chatbot. And sometimes a chatbot that can actually engage in conversation. There are some good ones around. But my experience recently with an insurance company, to a car accident I had in December, a guy drove into my car, repaired, and I'm chasing the other party to reclaim my excess. And boy, that's an education in how not to implement something that engages with people. So, but I don't see any sign of that changing anytime soon. So one thing I take from this show, everything you said, indeed what we've discussed in this whole episode so far, in this context, it's a people issue, not a tech issue, completely, in terms of how these tools are deployed in organizations. At Klarna, I was reading about the CEO of Zoom who deployed an avatar to open his speech at an event recently. I just wonder what were they thinking to do all these things? Now you mentioned investors. So it comes back to people. And I think the idea of replacing all these expensive humans with AIs is surely as tempting as you can imagine to some organizations. Indeed, we've talked about recently, maybe it was late last year, on part of the future is this deployment. Indeed, recently we talked about you're going to have AIs on your team, a mix of kind of a hybrid in the new sense of the word of people and an AI as part of a team. And how's that going to work? And are the AIs going to take over? So you've got to have a strategy. Go back to the Global Alliance report, where strategically is a strategy or an approach, a strategic approach, if you will, is one of the biggest failings in what's going on in organizations, not by communicators necessarily, but by the organization as a whole. So it is a time when, and we said this a lot, communicators can really step up to the plate and take on the role of educating their organization into this is how we need to be doing this. Often it is the case they want to do that and they would like to do that and they propose all the reasons why they should, but they're shut out by others in the organization. So how do you get around that? You can't, basically. So this is people we're talking about in the broad sense. People tend to not always do the right things, as we know. And we're seeing a lot of that going on here, it seems to me.
I saw an example of this on the news last night. And this relates to the United States Social Security Administration. It was a woman who called for customer service and got the AI chatbot. This is something that Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, put in place, laying off a lot of the people who used to take those calls and replacing them with the AI. And the woman was saying, I didn't get my check in April.
How can I help you today?
Can I speak to an agent?
To better serve you, please briefly explain the reason for your call. How can I help you today?
I didn't get a check in April.
The 2025 Cost of Living Adjustment, or COLA, for Social Security and Supplemental Security Income, or SSI, beneficiaries is 2.5%. The standard Medicare Part B premium is $185 per month. If you're finished, feel free to hang up. Otherwise, how can I help you today?
I didn't get a check in April and I want to speak to an agent.
You can get Social Security retirement benefits and work at the same time. Say agent for additional assistance. If you're finished, feel free to hang up. Otherwise, how can I help you today?
Agent.
For faster service, please say the reason for your call. How can I help you today? The 2025 Cost of Living Adjustment, or COLA, for Social Security and Supplemental Security Income, or SSI, beneficiaries is 2.5%. The standard Medicare Part B premium is $185 per month. If you're finished, feel free to hang up. Otherwise,
people who get Social Security, a lot of them, that's their income for the month. So this is very, very serious. There's not somebody there to help her, and the AI doesn't direct her to a human when she needs one. And you got to think that somebody calling Klarna may not be in as dire a situation, but it's important to them, and their frustration will grow. The perception of that organization, their reputation will suffer. And I mean, for those organizations that compete for clients, they're going to see people leaving for competitors where humans will talk to them. And they'll have a competitive advantage if they go out publicly and say, do business with us and you'll talk to a human.
Yeah, I agree with you. It seems to me that some companies actually don't give a damn, it seems to me. It truly does. In that example you mentioned, I experienced that too, where you cannot get to a human. Indeed, many companies that I've seen, and my experience with this insurance company is one of them, they don't have a phone number anywhere on their website at all. Their contact page says, feel free to join us on our chat on the website. And you kind of get used to figuring out what are the kind of key phrases I know that's going to prompt the bot to say, I'll get an agent to talk to you now. And there are some that are not consistent and some just will not, like the example you gave. One of the better ones I found is Amazon, where I've had occasion to call them on some orders I wanted to return or I had questions about something. And they make it very easy. But their first line is a chatbot. But you can easily get around that because they publish the contact information and they call you back. Here in the UK, the call center is based in Ireland because there's an Irish number. But it works well, even though the person who calls could be in Asia. It depends. You don't really care. You're talking to a human who is very empathetic and engaging and knows your issue because you pop up on a screen with your account information straight away. It's very professional, very well done. GoDaddy is another one. I've used GoDaddy for years. I had to do something with a domain that I wanted to cancel. I had a question about it. I phoned them. I got a person, and it was a delightful experience. And so I'd recommend them ahead of whoever doesn't do it like that. But this takes time to build up a head of steam. And in the meantime, you've got this situation. And most people, I think, don't really take it to that kind of level. They just hang up and they'll think twice next time. And that's a dilemma. And as you note, it's all part of the big equation about mistrust, etc. I don't think half of these companies are aware of this, which in a sense surprises me. But then again, it doesn't, because some of them just don't care at all. And that's a shame. So, and by the way, Duolingo, it's really intriguing. I didn't know about all that stuff on their social media. I've been using Duolingo for a while, and I use them actually to improve further my Spanish. So I do advanced learning with Duolingo. It's an excellent product, I have to say. It truly is outstanding. So I wasn't aware of any of that bad stuff you mentioned. Crazy stuff, really.
And they've been a poster child for effective social media for a long time.
That I was aware of, but all
you remember
this
when they killed the owl and then brought Owly back?
Yeah.
So I mean, they've been really good at it. And then just to wipe out all of that.
That really is quite extraordinary. Really quite extraordinary.
Because people were leaving bad comments over this short-term stretch.
It's weird, isn't it?
Amazing.
So that takes us, I think, to another interesting story, that one we've talked about quite a bit already on this. And yes, AI is a big proponent of this, but this is about Google AI overviews. We talked about this some episodes ago. And something quite interesting that's happening with mostly the mainstream media online. So positioning, a foundational promise of the open web, has long been this: publish quality content and search engines will send traffic your way. But that equation appears to be breaking dramatically thanks to this AI Overviews product from Google. Mail Online, one of the world's largest English language news sites, the print version is called the Daily Mail. It's a right-wing but politically oriented tabloid newspaper, still huge circulation, but the website is definitely one of the, I guess, one of the top five largest English language sites in the world. They recently revealed that when Google includes an AI overview for a keyword they rank number one for, their click-through rate can collapse by more than 50%. On desktop, click-through rates have dropped from 13% to below 5%. On mobile, the drop is from around 20% to just 7%. Even when they're cited in the AI overview itself, Mail Online still loses up to 44% of clicks. Speaking at the World News Media Congress in Krakow, Poland early this month, Carly Stephen, Mail Online's director of SEO and editorial e-commerce, called the effect pretty shocking and warned that we're witnessing a profound shift in the publisher-search engine relationship. She suggested that unless newsrooms pivot hard towards branded searches and unreplicable content, think of columnists and live blogs, the traditional model of search-led visibility may be lost. And this isn't just a Mail Online issue. An independent Ahrefs study found that across a wide swathe of informational keywords, Google AI Overviews lower average click-through rates by 34.5%. That's a huge dent in the organic traffic pipeline, particularly for media, but also for brands, marketers, and anyone reliant on Google for discoverability. Critics argue that Google is building a walled garden, keeping users on its own platform rather than sending them out to the wider web. It's not hard to see why. The more time people spend on Google's pages, the more valuable their ad inventory becomes. The thrust of our conversations on this topic in previous podcast episodes. But the price may be a slow suffocation of the free and open internet as we know it. So let's consider what this means for publishers, for search strategy, for public relations, for media relations, for the business models that rely on Google behaving more like a neutral platform than a content competitor. Your thoughts?
I think there are a number of issues to unpack from this trend. One is that some of this decline in Google search really doesn't have anything to do with AI. It's the fact that Gen Z is abandoning Google in unprecedented numbers. Nearly half of Gen Z are using TikTok, YouTube, and Snapchat as their primary search engines. I guess Google wouldn't be too upset to know that they're going to YouTube instead. It's still one of their properties. But why are these natives so distrustful of traditional platforms? How is their skepticism reshaping the landscape? And what does it mean for business trying to connect with them? They are, after all, the most digitally savvy generation we've ever seen. But for those who are just settling for the AI overviews, PR is evolving from a support role to a core strategy for brands that are looking for visibility in AI-powered search. AI engines are increasingly relying on brand mentions, reputation, and authority signal, and PR excels at generating these. With traditional search results being replaced by AI-generated summaries and conversational interfaces, brands have to focus on building reputation-based visibility rather than just traditional SEO tactics. I saw one report that said about 61% of signals that inform AI's understanding of brand reputation come from editorial media sources. That means PR-driven mentions and high-authority publications are critical for establishing topical authority and entity recognition. Unlike traditional Google rankings, AI systems don't rank content the same way. They learn brand associations through consistent mentions across trusted publications. Research shows that brand search volume correlates strongly with visibility in AI chatbot searches. And that emphasizes the importance of using PR to build buzz around brand names rather than just product keywords.
It's a complicated landscape, I think. I remember one of our conversations about this, that my view then, I'm not sure whether it's still the same, I think it is this is an inevitable evolution of search. That if it turns out that Google search results include not just a link to your content, but a summary of it, as is common now, and you then, okay, that's all I need, and you then don't click through, then you need to find another way to get people's attention rather than complain about it, as many were doing. But the Daily Mail experience shows the reality of this, which, in my view, adds even greater importance to you need to make sure your content. So your focus needs to shift to the new paradigm, which is where we're at, not the old paradigm. That's history, and that isn't going to come back anytime soon, I don't think. How does it fit as well with changes such as you mentioned? So other platforms are now people's preferred search tool. I was reading a story earlier today about some research showing that with certain generation, I have a feeling it's Gen Z, ChatGPT is a favored search tool. People are getting to content via looking up something on ChatGPT. It used to be Perplexity was always quoted this way, but not so much these days, is that you then click the link in the results it gives you, and that shows us where you came from, that ChatGPT. So the whole landscape is shifting, and yet maybe brands and others, their kind of focus on Google search as was hasn't shifted yet. Maybe that's it.
Maybe. The risk continues to those who rely on their websites for income, clicks to the websites in order to get people to see the ads. That's under threat, the whole model of the web. And that's not going to serve Google well for its search property. If people can't maintain their websites because nobody's visiting them, what's the incentive? What's the motivation to create that content that Google scoops up and sells ads against? But, one of the interesting things I read in that report about Gen Z was that they fact check. They're very skeptical. They're very distrustful. And they will, when they hear something, go to Google and search in order to confirm what they heard someplace else altogether. So you never know. Gen Z and Gen A may be Google's savior when it comes to traditional search.
But they don't click through from what they find on Google. That's the thing. They don't then click through. So that I get what I need to satisfy myself that it is legit, what I heard this guy say on YouTube or on TikTok. So I've got what I need, and I don't go any further than that.
I didn't get that from Gen Z. It may be true, but they didn't say that Gen Z was settling for the AI overviews.
Probably are, I would say, because what I have read elsewhere, and I'm sure we've talked about this, is Gen Zers typically, to tar everyone with the same brush, trust anything and don't do fact checking. And so obviously something shifted in that case if they are now doing fact checking. So I guess it just shows the volatility of this overall landscape. And in the context of this topic, this conversation, I think the reality of search is it's not like that anymore, where you would see, there's your search term, and it couldn't be a kind of conversational question. It was just peppered with keywords, and up would come listing of links in a hierarchical order based on whatever Google's algorithm decides the order, and you click a link and go there. And I think that was always unsatisfactory. I certainly found it completely unsatisfactory when you got to your destination and you didn't notice it was a promotional link and it would just give you generic sales stuff. The example I gave, which is always in my mind, when we were talking about the changes, and we had it in a conversation. I wrote a blog post about it. I had screenshots galore showing, here's my search term that I wrote. It was about plug-in hybrid cars was a search term I used. And Google's search results showed me, this car maker, this car dealer, you name it, all showing up as sponsored links. So I click on a couple of them, and all I get is a generic page from the website, nothing related to my search term. That puts you off entirely. Whereas with this new basis, you get the paragraph description, you get the answer to your question, and links to a whole lot more. And I remember Perplexity a year ago or so now would have at the end of everything, it said, you might also be interested in, and there's all related stuff too. So the old way's gone, and it seems to me that some organizations just haven't quite clicked that yet, and they need to move faster.
Incidentally, one other interesting thing I read about Gen Z's use of ChatGPT in particular is that they're using it for life decisions. Yeah. It's not just when I need information. It's I need to decide whether I'm going to do A, B, or C. What should I do? And they're testing their decisions. They're living their life with help from ChatGPT, which I think is an interesting development.
Well, you've also got the therapy and all this stuff that people are also using instead of paying for a therapist at extortion or expensive hourly rates. Use ChatGPT.
Which isn't a therapist,
serious.
but as I heard somebody else say on a podcast recently, sometimes you can't find any therapists who are taking new patients, or you have to wait a couple of weeks. Using ChatGPT as a therapist is better than having no therapy at all. Is what
Right.
this
So to you,
individual on a podcast said.
ChatGPT, GPT is the therapist in that case.
All right, well, let's move on from AI for our last report of the day. Are you looking for a new content marketing opportunity? Well, here's one. A growing number of adults are turning to Google for help with the most basic life skills. And smart companies are capitalizing on this trends in ways that should make content marketers take notice. Here's the data that caught my attention. Google searches for things like how to clean a bathroom vent, how to use a mop, how to change the oil in my car, have reached all-time highs this year. We're not talking about advanced home improvement projects. We're talking about basic adulting tasks that previous generations, yours and mine, for example, Neville, we learned these from family members or home economics classes. According to a report in Axios, they were reporting on Google's internal data. More than ever, adults are looking for online help with day-to-day life skills that once might have been taught in home ec classes or passed down from elders. By 2018, more than half of U.S. YouTube users were already saying they use the platform for figuring out how to do things they haven't done before, and this trend has only accelerated. Think about what this represents. Millions of people searching every day for answers to questions like how to change a tire, how to balance a checkbook, how to iron a shirt, how to file taxes, or how to negotiate salary. These aren't niche topics. These are fundamental adult skills that an entire generation is having to learn from scratch through search engines and AI chatbots. Now, the reason for the skills gap, well, they're fascinating from a sociological perspective, and we'll come back to that. But from a communication standpoint, what matters is the opportunity. When people have questions, they're not asking mom or dad, they're asking Google or TikTok or Instagram or YouTube. And that creates an enormous content marketing opportunity for companies whose products or services relate to any aspect of adult life. Let me share a few examples of companies that have capitalized on this trend brilliantly and for a long time. Home Depot and Lowe's have turned DIY education into a cornerstone of their marketing strategy. Both companies have massive YouTube channels with millions of subscribers, extensive how-to content libraries, and comprehensive guides that answer basic questions like how to use a drill or how to install a light fixture. And the key is that they're not just selling products, they're positioning themselves as trusted advisors for people who lack basic home maintenance knowledge. Home Depot's YouTube channel has become what many consider the internet's go-to resource for DIY guidance. And Lowe's content marketing strategy focuses heavily on educational tutorials that build brand loyalty before purchase decisions. The financial services industry has been particularly aggressive in targeting this trend. Banks like KeyBank have created financial wellness centers that provide guidance for young consumers on topics like how much does it cost to rent an apartment as a new graduate, or how to negotiate your salary after receiving an offer. These aren't just product pitches, they're addressing real knowledge gaps that their target demographic has. Credit unions and community banks are using this approach to compete with larger institutions. FIR Credit Union, for example, offers content about navigating San Francisco's expensive rental market and provides rental deposit loans, positioning themselves as allies who understand the specific challenges their young customers face. It gets really interesting, though, for communication professionals. The companies succeeding at this aren't just creating content, they're building entire ecosystems around life skills education. There's even a phenomenon like the Dad How Do I YouTube channel created by Rob Kenny, which has gone viral teaching young adults basic tasks like changing a tire or tying a tie. And he isn't monetizing this directly. Companies are still taking note of the massive demand for this type of content. The scope of the opportunity is frankly staggering. We're talking about content possibilities around financial literacy, home maintenance, career skills, health and wellness, basic cooking, car maintenance, legal basics, technology troubleshooting, relationship advice. Every single one of these categories represents potential content marketing territory for companies in related industries. Don't expect this to be a short-lived trend. The factors that created this skills gap, which is the decline of home economics education, they don't teach home ec in school anymore. Dual career families with less time for teaching practical skills. Geographic mobility that separates young adults from family support networks. These are structural changes in society. So for communication professionals, this represents a fundamental shift in content strategy. Instead of creating content about your products or services, create content about the life skills your customers need to successfully use your products or services. Instead of assuming people know how to do basic tasks, you can become the trusted source that teaches them basic tasks. The companies that are winning at this aren't just dumping information online, they're creating comprehensive, searchable, well-organized content libraries that position them as long-term resources. When someone learns how to change their car's oil from your YouTube video, they remember your brand when they need to change their oil. When somebody learns about credit scores from your bank's educational content, they think of you when they're ready for a mortgage. The key is authenticity and genuine helpfulness. Younger consumers, Gen Z in particular, along with millennials, they can spot marketing disguised as education from miles away. The content that works is genuinely useful, comprehensive, and created with the learner's success in mind, not just lead generation. From a strategic communication standpoint, this trend also represents a trust-building opportunity. At a time when institutional trust is at historic lows, becoming the source people turn to for reliable, practical guidance creates a different kind of relationship with your audience. You're not just a vendor, you're a helpful resource they discovered when they needed you most. So take a stab at auditing your organization's areas of expertise and identify the basic life skills your customers need to know to successfully engage with your industry.
Good advice throughout. And the examples you gave or you discussed on DIY, I've had that here for years. All the big DIY retailers here in the UK and wholesalers, for that matter, have YouTube channels. Some of the consumer electronics stores have, installation guides to how to set up your TV. How do you get your computer doing X, Y, and Z? I mean, all this stuff has been happening. I use this kind of thing a lot myself via ChatGPT primarily. How do I do X? So when we were moving to our new house here in Somerset, I found out all I needed to know about the router that I needed and how to configure it, and comparisons between what models are on the market via a lengthy to and fro with ChatGPT.
You fact-checked it, right?
Oh, well, about to say, the major work was me checking all the things. I've never experienced a hallucination in this context, as far as I'm aware. So nothing's blown up or fallen off the walls as a result of that. So even when I bought this portable air conditioner that I haven't got set up yet, the toing and froing, brainstorming ideas on the best way to set up the exhaust hose in my studio. And ChatGPT was very helpful. I also used Gemini for that too. And, I'm quite comfortable with that. But it is an opportunity for companies. But I can see as well that you mentioned the two key words, authenticity and value to the user as opposed to lead generation. And the cynical side of me talks about how really difficult it is for some companies to get out of marketing mode and think about the engagement with the potential customers, or not even potential customers. Offer something of value to people that might give you a benefit. Trouble is, that's hard for some companies to justify without the hard facts behind what's the ROI I'm going to get out of doing this. So it's a mixed bag, and you've got to be careful too. I mean, I was looking on YouTube while you were talking, and there's no end of so-called expert videos that you could follow. But how do you know whether they're trustworthy or not without doing a lot of legwork to check it up yourself? So that's your landscape, and always best to get a recommendation, I think. And there are some that you could take a plunge and say, yes, I would trust this organization. I've heard of them. They have a local branch where I've been in the store and I know them, so I'll trust what they're telling me on this, that, and the other. That's great until they get hacked or some other impediment occurs that dislodges that trust. But that is the landscape. So it's caveat emptor most of the time, I think, Shel.
I think an organization looking to do content marketing around this stuff would be advised to dig up the curriculum from a high school home economics class and look at what they taught and see where that aligns with your industry. Because if you find those intersections, it means you have subject matter experts on those topics, and it would probably not be that difficult to start creating content. You're being strategic about it, creating an ecosystem, making it navigable and searchable and really useful for people and making it discoverable. That's another thing. But as you mentioned, the fact that you use ChatGPT for these how-tos, I've talked to other people. In fact, one of the guys running the AI subcommittee that I'm on, the enterprise AI subcommittee where I work, he's got multiple old vehicles, and he's getting codes when he plugs the computer into it to see why it won't start. And he's just going to AI and saying, I have this year model of this vehicle. I'm getting this code on the computer. What do I need to do? And it tells him. And so far, it's always been right.
Yeah.
This is happening. So how do we get our adulting tutorials into AI? Well, we talked about that in a previous story. It's media relations, it's great content marketing, it's third-party validity, but we need to get content out there that talks about the how and not the what. This is a big focus for me right now. I haven't had time to do much about it because we're implementing a new internal communications platform, and that's eating my life up until June 2nd when it goes live. But I really want to start getting more content out there that talks about how we do stuff and not what we did, because that's the kind of content that finds its way into AI query results.
Yeah, I agree. No, this is something that communicators particularly need to pay close attention to, the way this is evolving and how. You could ask your AI to give you an assessment of what you should do in this situation. You might be surprised at the good advice you might get. Check the source system.
I'm tempted to go get a curriculum from a home ec class and develop a website called Adulting, just finding the best content that's out there right now. Just curate a site that this is what they used to teach in home ec, and this is what your parents used to teach you when they taught you how to be an adult. Now you can learn it all here. We've vetted this. It's all good, accurate, credible advice from a variety of trusted subject matter experts. Come to one and buy ads. Buy stuff from the ads that we have to support this site.
You should definitely do it in your copious spare time.
In my copious free time, which I have none of. Well, that'll do it for this episode of For Immediate Release. Our next episode is going to drop on Monday, June 23rd, our next long-form monthly episode, that is. We'll be recording that on Saturday, the 21st of June. Until then, we would be very grateful if you would send us your thoughts about any of the items that you have heard here today. You can send an email to fircomments@gmail.com. You can include an audio comment, just attach it to the email, or better yet, go to firpodcastnetwork.com and click that little button that says send voicemail and record your thoughts right there. You can also just send us a narrative text comment. You can leave those comments on the show notes at the FIR website at firpodcastnetwork.com. You can leave those comments where we post the announcement about the show on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on Blue Sky, on Threads, and on Mastodon. We also very much appreciate your ratings and reviews wherever you get your podcasts. And that will be a 30 for this episode of For Immediate Release.